MandJTV. I really like his little like videos on like that are educational. You know what I mean? Why catching these Pokemon was almost impossible.
And fire
by MandJTV.
red and leaf green in Kanto. But at the time, there was one other mainline region, Johto. This was the first time in Pokemon history that a region and its Pokemon existed but could not be traveled to. This mattered because of Gen 3's introduction of the National Pokédex, a dex covering every Pokemon that existed at the time, even those that could not be caught in that specific game. In later generations, you could make quite a lot of progress toward completing a national dex by simply transferring Pokemon in from a previous generation. For example, Generation 4 included Kanto, Johto, and Sinnoh, but not Hoenn. So you could transfer Hoenn Pokemon in from Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, even though you didn't technically have to. But Gen 3 never connected to Gen 2. So your Johto Pokemon in Gold, Silver, and Crystal were stuck there. Therefore, to get Johto Pokemon within Gen 3, you had to obtain them within Gen 3. And getting all of them was almost impossible. I went through every Johto Pokemon and gave them ranks of 1 through 6 based on how difficult they are to obtain. And we're gonna cover all of them, progressing from the easiest to the ones that were so difficult that I would call it cruelly ridiculous. The first and easiest difficulty rank is rank 1, Regional Dex. I was gonna call this pre-game, but I realized 1, it's really more during game, and 2, I didn't want to make it sound like these Pokemon were taking shots at their apartment before they headed out to the bars. Rank 1 Pokemon are obtainable before the Pokemon League in a handheld game, which directly means they're in the Hoenn Regional Dex, since the Kanto Regional Dex does not have any Pokemon outside of the original 151, including later gen evolutions, which I think is stupid, and it's pissed me off every time they've done this. Meryl can be found very early in Hoenn, and it even got a new baby form with Azurill. Zubat, Golbat, Oddish, and Gloom are found everywhere, so of course their evolutions Crobat and Blossom are present. Slugma and Skarmory are found in the areas around or inside Mount Chimney. Amusing side note, I know of many people who actually thought that Slugma, Magcargo, and Skarmory were Hoenn Pokemon, not Johto Pokemon, partially because major trainers used them, but more so because you really just couldn't find them in Gen 2. No major trainers used them, and then in the wild, Skarmory was only in Silver and Crystal and very rare, while Slugma was only ever found in Kanto. I will never understand why they did that. So many Johto Pokemon in the Johto games were only post-game. But back to Johto Pokemon in the Hoenn Regional Dex. Corsola, Chinchou, and Lantern are found in Hoenn's vast ocean, as is Horsey, which you can evolve all the way to Kingdra. But they do make it annoyingly tough to do since dragon scales are only found on wild Horsey and Beta.
Yeah.
Igglybuff can be bred from Jigglypuff, which is found on Route 115. And then the rest of the Johto Pokemon in the Hoenn Regional Dex are found directly or indirectly in the Safari Zone. Natu, Xatu, Wobbuffet.
I cannot tell you how much I hate the Safari Zone. I hate the Safari Zone, dude. Oh my god.
Which is of course here because of Why Not. Girafarig, Heracross, Phanpy, and Donphan are all wild there, as is Pikachu, which is how you get Pichu. By the way, it took me way too long to realize that the Hoenn Safari Zone is you going on a safari to Kanto and Johto. There is not a single Gen 3 Hoenn Pokemon that spawns there, and most Safari Zone Pokemon do not spawn anywhere else. It's a wildlife preserve for exotic Pokemon that are just not exotic in other regions. I think I might have missed this because while the Kanto Safari Zone has exclusive Pokemon in it, like Scyther or Chansey, it's also packed with Pokemon that you can find elsewhere. But then the Hoenn Safari Zone is like, look, Pikachu! You can't find this anywhere else. And I'm just like, yeah, but it's Pikachu. I can find it in a lot of other places, just not in Hoenn. So those are the rank 1 Johto Pokemon, but next is rank 2. post-game evolutions. These are Pokemon where you can get some members of their evolutionary line before the Pokemon League, but you can't get all of them until after. And again, I hate that they did this. Being too faithful to the original games does not a good remake make. But I still think 2 is a proper rank here because you can at least make some amount of progress beforehand. First up, the babies. Cleffa, Tyrogue, Smoochum, Elekid, and Magby can only be obtained when bred from their evolutions, which are all found in Fire Red and Leaf Green, although Electabuzz is a Fire Red exclusive and Magmar is a Leaf Green exclusive. They locked the babies to the post-game by putting the daycare on 4 Island, a post-game only Sevi Island. There is another daycare just south of Cerulean City, but it only lets you raise 1 Pokemon at a time, and thus you can't do any breeding there. Next, there are the trade with item evolutions. Kingdra does apply here in Fire Red and Leaf Green, but it's still in rank 1 because it's earlier in Hoenn. Those in rank 2 are Scizor and Steelix needing the Metal Coat, Politoed and Slowking needing the King's Rock, and Porygon 2 needing the upgrade. But I should note that Scyther is a Fire Red exclusive and Slowpoke is a Leaf Green exclusive. The 3 items are found only at these locations, all post-game. And the final rank 2 post-game evolution Pokemon is the weirdest, because it's a friendship evolution, which is somehow restricted to the post-game. Restricting the 2 Pokemon daycare and the evolution makes logical sense, since you can physically put them out of reach. But friendship is not something you can restrict. You cannot destroy the human and Pokemon spirit of connection. And yet they did it anyways! The Pokemon's friendship will still grow throughout the game, but the evolution won't trigger until the first level up after getting the National Pokedex. This feels just so morally wrong to me. What are we teaching the children? That friendship should be conditional? Well, I guess technically, yes, it should be. Like, if your friend stabs you, don't be friends with them anymore. But if the conditions are just,
are you speaking from personal experience?
That's a bad lesson. Crobat is one of these friendship evolutions, and I will forever think it's stupid that you can use a Crobat on a playthrough team in Ruby Sapphire Emerald, but not in Fire Red Leaf Green.
Makes no sense!
All 5 being games with Zubat, and all of them in the same generation. Ugh! I'm enraged! Also, the last rank 2 Pokemon is Blissey. Chansey into Blissey. Chansey's only in Kanto. I should mention that there are a couple more friendship evolutions that I'm not covering yet, because there is some nonsense going on with them that pushed them higher up in the difficulty rankings.
Oh.
Aha! It is I, Grunty!
Oh, nice! It's Grunty Boy!
I have no style.
Oh.
I love the team uniform, but it's limiting my personal expression. What do I do? Well, there's Holzkern, the sponsor of today's video. Holzkern is a watch and jewelry brand for both men and women that focuses on making products built with natural materials, like wood and stone. The products are made in small quantities to ensure ethical and responsible production, and they all come with a 2-year guarantee. Great place to buy gifts, by the way. I got my girlfriend several pieces of Holzkern jewelry last year. Oh, and since they're accessories, I could wear Holzkern products with my uniform, and thus improve my style. Hell yeah, man. Try this. It's the Melodical watch. The strap is genuine brown leather. Ooh, I love it. This has immediately amplified my style. I knew it would. I know a lot of things. Head to holzkern.com/MandJ to get 15% off the entire site by using code MandJTV. Shipping is free worldwide in 5 to 9 business days. And if you're in the US, don't worry about tariffs. They sorted that out behind the scenes. Amazing! Nice. I will definitely be doing more shopping there. With all their great stuff, I can absolutely perfect my fashion. I mean my style. Ta-ta! Next is rank 3, post-game easy. Okay. The Pokemon are relatively easy to obtain, but only once you're in the post-game. Many of them are found in Fire Red and Leaf Green's Sevi Islands. Dunsparce is found in 3 Island Port. You can go to 3 Island during the main story, but the cave leading to its grass patch isn't dug out until you get the National Dex. Icefall Cave on 4 Island has Wooper and Delibird in Fire Red, Sneasel in Leaf Green, and Swinub in both. It also has Marill, but that's early in Hoenn. Quillfish and Remoraid are version exclusives in Fire Red and Leaf Green respectively, and both are Super Rod fished across several places on 5, 6, and 7 islands. Sentret is also found in grass across those same 3 islands. 5 Island has Hoppip all over it, then its Lost Cave has Murkrow in Fire Red and Mischievous in Leaf Green. The Water Labyrinth is also where you get an egg for Togepi. Moving to 6 Island, Ruin Valley has Yanma, along with Natu and Wobbuffet, who we know are earlier in Hoenn. On the island's north side, you have the Pattern Bush, which has Spinarak in Fire Red, Ladybug in Leaf Green, and then also Heracross, again earlier in Hoenn. 6 Island also has Altering Cave, a strange place with only Zubats, which is weird considering how late game it is. Turns out it was actually coded to make it so Johto Pokemon could spawn there after receiving a certain event. But none of these events ever happened, so it definitely does not count as a place where you can get any Johto Pokemon. 7 Island features Skarmory and Fanpeep, both already in Hoenn, but Seavault Canyon is the only place to get Larvitar at a frustratingly low level. Mantine can also be found in the water, but only in Leaf Green, and the Tanabe ruins at the south end are where Unknown spawn. And that wraps up the Johto Pokemon in the Sevi Islands. And you may be wondering, wait, what about the others? There's definitely a lot more Johto Pokemon that would fit into post-game easy that you haven't mentioned. Where are they? And don't worry, I'm gonna tell you, but we have to answer a pretty big question first. Has Pokemon Emerald come out yet? The National Dex technically exists in Ruby and Sapphire, but it only activates by trading with Fire Red, Leaf Green, or Emerald, games that of course did not exist when Ruby and Sapphire first came out. Therefore, there isn't any messaging in Ruby and Sapphire about the National Pokedex. Fire Red and Leaf Green are a different story. Getting the National Pokedex is a big moment in the game and is required to keep exploring. The post-game plot focuses on unlocking the ability to trade with Ruby and Sapphire. They're pushing you to complete this new expanded dex. But at the time these games came out, Emerald did not exist yet. This is a problem, because I've already covered almost every Johto Pokemon you can get in the first 4 mainline Gen 3 games. So, what were you supposed to do to get the others? Let's consult my Fire Red and Leaf Green guidebook, specifically the section on completing the National Pokedex. Oh, what's this? Trading with Pokemon Colosseum's Story Mode. Players who've explored Ore in Pokemon Colosseum know that you cannot catch wild Pokemon in the region. You can only snag 48 tainted Pokemon from crooks.
Tainted Pokemon?
Many of them are exclusive to the Ore region, so the only way to get them into Kanto is to trade with the Nintendo GameCube game. That's right, for a period of time in Gen 3, there were dozens of Pokemon exclusive to Pokemon Colosseum.
Of course there was.
A game for the Nintendo GameCube.
Because of course there was.
Steal shadow Pokemon from opposing trainers. This meant that a bunch of Johto Pokemon required not only a different game, but an entirely different console. And on that game, you had to snag the shadow Pokemon by stealing them from other trainers, then spend time purifying them by using them in battle, leaving them in the daycare, giving them cologne massages, etc., and beat the main story to allow for trading with the Game Boy Advance. Some of the Johto Pokemon are really early, but others like Shuckle are super late. Additionally, some Pokemon like Mareep or Pineco required you to trade their formerly Shadow evolved forms over to a handheld game and then breed them there, since breeding does not exist in Ore. During this period where there was Fire Red and Leaf Green but not Emerald, all the Pokemon exclusive to Colosseum would absolutely be in a higher difficulty rank. But that period did end, and also, it was shorter than I thought it was. In the US, Fire Red and Leaf Green came out in September of 2004, but then Emerald came out in May of 2005, less than a year later. It felt so much longer when I was a kid. But with the arrival of Emerald,
your sense of time was probably different.
Were made locally available on the Gen 3 handheld games for the very first time. Most of them were added in the Safari Zone expansion, unlocked after becoming champion. These 2 new areas, bringing the zone's total to 6, were chock full of almost exclusively Johto Pokemon. There were some that were already in Fire Red and Leaf Green, but Hoothoot, Mareep, Apom, Sunkern, Gligar, Snubbull, Stantler, Pineco, Teddiursa, Houndour, Miltank, and Shuckle were all added, making it so Emerald Safari Zone is the only place you can get them on the Gen 3 handheld games. But then there were actually 2 more wild Johto Pokemon added in Emerald though, just in a different place. The first is Smeargle, which oddly got its own dedicated place, that being Artisan Cave in the Battle Frontier, which spawns Smeargle and no other Pokemon. I guess they just wanted a place for you to like have easy access to a bunch of Smeargle in case you wanted to sketch something, but something goes wrong.
But why Smeargle?
It feels kind of weird.
Why
Smeargle?
Smeargle
Here. There is a second Battle Frontier Johto Pokemon, but I've put it a level above, in rank 4, Postgame Medium. Postgame obtained, but there's some measure of difficulty in regards to getting it beyond most Pokemon.
Jesus
the first
Christ.
is Sudowoodo. Like in Johto, there's a strange tree in the overworld.
I don't like
this one on the
Sudowoodo.
southern edge of the Battle Frontier. You simply water it and battle it, and hopefully catch it. I moved it up to rank 4 because unlike all the rank 3 Pokemon, there's only one. If you fail to catch it, it will not respawn. So if you forget to save before you KO it, you lose Sudowoodo in all 5 Gen 3 handheld games. Assuming one save file per cartridge, there's 1 Sudowoodo in all of Gen 3. Well, there's also the Shadow one in Colosseum as a backup. But like, just the handhelds. 1 Sudowoodo. Next is Hitmontop. There is a Shadow one in Colosseum, but if only using the mainline games, you have to first breed a Tyrogue from Hitmonchan or Hitmonlee, then level up that Tyrogue to level 20, and hope that you got its attack and defense stats exactly equal. Seriously. Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan are easy.
What
attack
the
higher,
hell?
Hitmonlee. Defense higher, Hitmonchan. But getting them exactly equal can be really tricky and require multiple tries. You'll definitely have to shell out for some vitamins or do some actual EV training if either stat is affected by the Tyrogue's nature. It's not completely insane, but it's definitely a more involved process than most evolutions. And finally for rank 4 are Umbreon and Espeon. These are the last 2 friendship evolutions that I mentioned earlier, and they're up in this higher difficulty rank because very stupidly, you cannot evolve an Eevee into Umbreon and Espeon in the same game that you get Eevee. Espeon and Umbreon are both friendship evolutions, but with a distinct difference from others like Crobat and Blissey. The time of day matters. If the final level up occurs during the day, you get Espeon, and at night, you get Umbreon. In Gen 2, Gold, Silver, and Crystal had a day and night cycle, so this functioned logically and straightforwardly. But then Gen 3 got weird and dumb. Fire Red and Leaf Green, where Eevee is obtained, not only don't have a day and night cycle, but they don't have a time system at all. But then Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald do. You just can't see it most of the time. The clock you set at the beginning of the game triggers time-based events, like berry growing, daily lotto tickets, and Shoal Cave. This system is also what allows for the evolution of Eevee into Espeon and Umbreon. So if you want both Espeon and Umbreon in Gen 3, you have to get the 1 Eevee in the entire game at Celadon City, become champion, get the National Pokedex and the Rainbow Pass, breed at least 1 more Eevee at the 4 Island Daycare, unlock the ability to trade with the Hoenn Games, which does not happen once you have the National Dex. There's that side quest with Team Rocket that you have to go through, trade both Eevees to Hoenn, then raise their friendship there, and then level them up at the right time of day. This was the dumbest way to do what should have been straightforward evolutions. Like, why wasn't time just simply a thing in Fire Red and Leaf Green? Like, the technology was there. It's in older games in the same generation. Why didn't you just let me set a clock in Fire Red and Leaf Green? I know how, I promise. Also, they should have just given you an Eevee in Emerald's post-game. Come on! It is debatably easier to just get Espeon and Umbreon from the GameCube games. Obviously, using a whole other game and system adds difficulty, but Espeon and Umbreon are the starter Pokemon in Colosseum, which is very cool. And while you do still have to complete the main story to trade with the handhelds, because they're not shadow Pokemon, you don't have to worry about purifying them in order to trade them. You can also get them from XD, Colosseum's sequel, since you start the game with an Eevee, but you pick one of the 5 evolutions to evolve it into, and thus could get only one or the other. Fun fact, XD is the only game with traditional battle mechanics where you can evolve an Eevee into an Umbreon or Espeon without raising their friendship. You instead have to have a Sun Shard or a Moon Shard in your bag. Friendship evolutions do exist in XD, but the time of day does not. So this was an interesting workaround. I would prefer, personally, that they just did what they did for Leafeon and Glaceon, just make them Sun and Moonstone evolutions. That'd be so much easier than friendship. Very important, but a lot of work. And with the Johto evolutions finished, we've now reached rank 5. Postgame
Lord.
hard. These Pokemon are exceptionally difficult to get in the Gen 3 handheld games, to the point of debatable cruelty. These Pokemon, and those that come after them, are what really make Johto Pokemon in Gen 3 almost totally out of reach. First, the legendary beasts, Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. They are actually found in Fire Red and Leaf Green, roaming Kanto after the player has completed the Sevi Islands quest and unlocked the ability to trade with Ruby and Sapphire. They're more work to unlock than the other Gen 3 roamers, Latios and Latias, but once you get them going, they're pretty straightforward roaming Pokemon, right?
Right? No? No!
No, they're so much worse. First off, you only get one of them. Why? Oh.
What? This guy has had a YouTube for over 9 years, Psy for over 9 weeks. I'll have you know, my YouTube channel is gonna be turning 2 years old in, well, technically December. But I believe my YouTube channel is actually made in November of 2023. But listen, it's been more than 9 weeks. Also, I hope to see you at Worlds, buddy boy. I hope to see you at Worlds. YouTube party in the...
3 were in Johto.
I'll be there.
That's
Heck
right
yeah!
next door. The beast that appears depends on your starter
I'll
choice
see you
at the
this
very
weekend,
beginning
buddy.
of the game. And it's the one strong against your starter. Raikou for Squirtle, Entei for Bulbasaur, and Suicune for Charmander.
Not November, okay? It's non-stop not November.
Now, this situation can be somewhat likened to trying to get all 3 starters in one save file. Most of the time, you and a friend who picked a different starter will each breed a baby and then send that over to the other person. This can be done as soon as you have access to the daycare, and maybe ditto if your starter is male.
It's
you can also get all 3 starters in one file really quickly if you have a second cartridge that you're willing to wipe, since you can pick one, trade, reset, pick another, trade. But you can't breed the beasts, they're legendary Pokemon, and you can't do the sacrificial save file thing because they're extremely late game. So to register all 3, you need 2 friends who chose different starters and can trade back with you. If you want to own
Bold of you to assume I have friends.
all 3, you have to beat Fire Red or Leaf Green, including their post-game quest, 3 full times in order to catch all 3. That is, assuming you can catch them at all. Because for 2 of them, you might lose them forever without KOing
Never,
them.
not again,
you
November.
Know that if you KO a roaming legendary back in the day, you must immediately reset your game or lose it permanently. But in Gen 3, there was another problem. If the wild Pokemon uses Roar to end the battle, they're gone permanently. Without having fainted.
Of course they are.
They only have the chance to do this if they're trapped, but if they do so and you check your Pokedex to see where it went, the Pokedex will show their location as area unknown, because the game treats Roar in a wild battle the same as KOing the wild Pokemon. This does only apply to Raikou and Entei, since at least Suicune doesn't know Roar, and of course using your Master Ball avoids this problem entirely. But even so, this is catastrophic. How many people lost their Raikou and Entei because they saved after it fled and didn't realize that it was actually gone forever? Oh, and one more bit of
The way I would have crashed
all
out.
roaming Pokemon that you catch in Ruby, Sapphire, Fire Red, and Leaf Green suck. There was another glitch that made it so their IVs were always garbage. HP behaved normally, ranging from 0 to 31, but attack maxed at 7, and all the others were set to 0, as low as possible. All that work.
That's so ridiculous.
Pokemon. Except in Emerald. They did fix it in Emerald. For the 3 legendary beasts, the GameCube is much easier. Not easy, of course, but like, not
Of course it
awful.
was.
That's because you can get all 3 in one save file. Throughout the main story of Colosseum, you'll fight 3 major boss battles against Cypher admins Dakeem, Venus, and Employer Identification Number, each of which have one Shadow legendary beast. These battles are
always
often
loved
tricky,
the Shadow
but
Pokemon.
snagging the Shadow beasts,
I wish
them,
they would bring them back into TCG.
using them on your team, then trading them to the handhelds later is a significantly more straightforward process than getting them in the Kanto games. It'll just be more expensive. The next and final group of Pokemon in rank 5 are, you guessed it,
Makes
the Johto
sense.
starters. They actually have 3 methods of obtaining them, and I'll start with the easiest, that being Colosseum. Yeah, Colosseum's the easiest one. Early in the story, you have to choose one of 3 Cypher peons to battle, each with a Shadow middle stage starter, Bayleaf, Quilava, or Croconaw. You can only get one at the time,
my
but
beloved.
later on you can snag the other 2. Like before, once you beat the main story and purify them, you can trade them to a handheld game and breed their pre-evolutions. The second way is in Pokemon XD. Mount Battle is a location in Ore that offers trainer battles and allows you to train your team and earn Poke Coupons. It has 100 total trainers, starting out under level 10 and finishing up at level 70. By defeating all 100 trainers, you get to choose one of the base form Johto starters as a reward. If you do so more than once, you can end up with all 3. But there is
300 battles.
A huge catch. Stopping by to do some battles to train, then moving on with your adventure, coming back and beating the whole thing does not count. You only get the Johto starter if you run through the entire thing in one go without changing your team at all. That means to get all 3 starters, you must do 300 battles, most of which will be mind-numbingly boring because you'll need a high-level team to beat the final boss, and the challenge starts at level 9. It's also frustrating because this is just not communicated to the player in-game. I remember playing XD and like finishing Mount Battle during the main story and then not getting the Johto starter, and I was like, what? Why? And then I looked up why and then got mad and never did it. But even doing 300 battles, I don't believe is the hardest method of getting all of the Johto starters in Gen 3. The last one, the only way to get them in the handheld games, is the toughest. The starters are only available in Emerald, and they're given to you as a simple gift from Professor Birch in Little Root Town. However, you only get one, and only after completing the entire Hoenn Pokedex. Yeah! Registering 200 Pokemon, including all the legends, gets you 1 starter? That's insane! Doing the 300 battles in XD at least gave you all 3 in one game. Assuming no access to the GameCube games at all, this means to get all 3 starters in Emerald, you need 2 other friends to have also completed the entire Pokedex. And then they have to choose the specific starters that you do not. Or if you're on your own, that means you have to have 3 Emerald save files and complete the Hoenn Pokedex 3 times! And without a GameCube, this is the only way to get them in Gen 3.
Of course it is!
Outrageous.
I can't believe this.
For all the rank 5 Pokemon, it's clear that the Shadow ones from Colosseum are by far the best method of obtaining them. But if you don't own a GameCube, you're in for a bad time. But at least they're still possible. That cannot be said for the Pokemon in the final rank. Rank 6, GameCube or event, exclusive. First is Lugia. You simply cannot get it directly in the handheld games today. There were event distributions for both Lugia itself and the Mystic Ticket, an item that allows the player to go catch one at the secret island Naval Rock. More on that in my Pokemon's Lost Islands video.
I love that video.
These events are long gone. The only way to get a Lugia in Gen 3 today is from Pokemon XD. This frankly badass Shadow Lugia is the box art mascot of the game, and you can battle and snag it during the climax of the story. Purifying it is not like the others though. To do so, you must use the Purification Chamber, which only exists in XD, not Colosseum. And it involves making these type advantage squares to maximize the tempo.
I don't understand anything that is happening there.
You can put Lugia in and purify it instantly, reverting it to its original appearance. Then it can be traded to the handheld games. Lugia's counterpart, Ho-Oh, is similar, but different in many ways and is drastically more difficult. Like Lugia, there were events to receive it directly, or the Mystic Ticket to go find one at Naval Rock, but those are over. Today, Ho-Oh is only found in the other Ore game, Colosseum. But it is so much more work. Step 1, beat the game. Step 2, snag and purify all 48 Shadow Pokemon. That takes ages. There's no passive purification.
There has to be someone out there that has done this.
Put all these Pokemon into your party individually, except for the only other passive way, which is just leave them in the daycare, which is not free. You run out of money, and then you're not even done. Remember the Mount Battle thing for the Johto starters in XD? You kind of got to do the same thing in Colosseum. Colosseum has a Mount Battle in the story mode, but it also has a battle mode with a dedicated Mount Battle challenge there. You must register a team from your story mode, then beat all 100 trainers in either single or double battles. In one way, this is harder than XD, but in another, it's easier. It's harder because the trainers follow the open level format. They match the level of the highest in your party. However, I should note they do have 0 EVs and IVs. And then it's easier than XD because every time you win without a Pokemon fainting, which will happen a lot early on, you earn a free continue. I'm pretty sure that in XD, if you have a single loss, you have to start over. Once you finish the challenge, Ho-Oh will be deposited into your story mode PC. You can then trade it to the handhelds. But seriously, do not do this until you've purified all the Shadow Pokemon. I'm like 99% sure if you finish the Mount Battle Challenge without all of them snagged and purified, then you don't get Ho-Oh and you have to start over. And that would really suck. And then finally is, of course, Celebi. Celebi is mythical, and thus it's par for the course that getting it is almost or completely impossible most of the time. It had several distributions throughout Gen 3, but those are long gone, so the only way to get it today is the Japanese Colosseum bonus disc. In the USA, pre-ordering Pokemon Colosseum got you this bonus disc, which can dispense Jirachi to copies of Ruby and Sapphire. Meanwhile, Japan's bonus disc dispensed Celebi, which does actually make more sense since you use Time Flutes to summon Celebi and purify Pokemon. However, unlike Jirachi, Celebi requires you to have purified all 48 Shadow Pokemon before it will send one to your story mode save file. Also, everything you use has to be Japanese, which is pretty tough for those of us in America. Although, apparently, I believe I read this correctly, you can dispense one Celebi per purified Pokemon, which is 48. So that's a lot of freaking Celebis. I guess they were just expecting like a few people to be just like the Celebi distributors. But now that I've covered the GameCube/event exclusive legends, you now know how to get every Johto Pokemon in the Gen 3 games. I've never gotten all of them myself, and I probably never will, but maybe I'll at least shoot for Ho-Oh someday. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see another video of mine going through the insane hoops we had to jump through to get Pokemon back in the day, check out my video on why getting Regigigas in Gen 4 was freaking ridiculous.
I won't lie, I was not playing Pokemon around that time. Should tell you how old I am. But holy shit, the way I would have crashed out if this is how I had to freaking get my favorite Pokemon. Holy shit. I would have cried. We're really spoiled nowadays because most Pokemon are pretty easily obtainable. And yeah, we need more vegetable Pokemons. We got what? Surfetched? Big League? Big Onion? Jesus Christ. That was a fun one. That was fun, but it also kind of made me like mad. It kind of made me mad.